It is 2026 and currently a Call of Duty title going on 6 years old as of later this year is currently outpacing existing experiences like Black Ops 7 and Warzone combined. An incredible anomaly that we don't see very often in the game space, but why is that? Well, this past Thursday, Steam listed a sale for Modern Warfare 2019 and its Standard Edition, a part of the Activision Spring Sale. Games like Black Ops 7 are down 45% to sub $40. Recent titles of Black Ops 6, Modern Warfare 3, and Modern Warfare 2, all of those marked down 60% to $28, while games like Vanguard were down to $24 and Cold War down to $20. But Modern Warfare 2019, well, it got its price cut from $60 to just $5.99, a 90% price drop and a large difference in the next best price cuts of 67% on a few titles. So while you won't be getting things like Warzone 1 servers back on or anything like that, the core offering of campaign, multiplayer, and Spec Ops is currently still only $6 on Steam, and I believe is until the end of the month. So this has created a kind of massive resurgence. While I'm sure there's a resurgence that's an unseen result of the boom on Steam, the numbers on Steam are the ones being talked about. That's where the Steam sale is happening. The game also did not come to Steam until March of 2023, 3.5 years after the game's launch, after its successor in the sub-franchise even launched. For those that don't remember, Modern Warfare 2019 was a Battle.net exclusive for its launch and, as stated, a long time of its subsequent existence. So much so that its all-time peak concurrent before this sale went live was only 3,500 players back in November of 2023. So Steam numbers are the highlight, blowing that previous best out of the water, but it's also likely a sign of lesser upticks because of all this buzz of people going back to Modern Warfare 2019 and checking it out, that all other platforms, if you jump on now, you'll see an uptick there and a relative ease in finding matches. So the return of Modern Warfare 2019 is an interesting one, because now we dive back into that topic of the good or the bad, what Modern Warfare 2019 did for the franchise, and it's all individual perspective based. That's what's lacking on what will either be good or bad to you, but there's a lot of objective truth behind what Modern Warfare 2019 introduced into the franchise and where we've been since then. But Modern Warfare 2019 revitalized the franchise in many ways from the very beginning, entering into a year of what is expected to be Modern Warfare 4, following back-to-back Modern Warfare titles in 2022 and 2023. It's easy to forget there wasn't always a Modern Warfare or Black Ops fatigue like we see now. In early 2019, when Modern Warfare was announced, it took the world by storm, as it was our first Modern Warfare entry in 8 years, coming off the heels of 2 less than ideal Infinity Ward titles, and what was a long-time lull for the franchise as the whole coming out of the jetpack era and moving back into the boots on the ground, sort of regaining their identity for the Call of Duty formula. Captain Price, a familiar face among a sea of new faces in the franchise for years leading up to that point, was a welcome one in hopes that despite being a reboot, that we'd be drawn back in just like we had been before for the first time over a decade before. Needless to say, the name Modern Warfare still held much weight at the time and way more anticipation than anything else the franchise had seen in the years. Narratively, being a reboot of the Modern Warfare story, characters you've known and come to love but told in a new capacity following new conflicts and eventually setting up the old foes you'd come to love to hate, 2019 was a progressive rollout of parallels in storytelling, a formation of Task Force 141 that wouldn't be what we know it to be today until a little later on down the line and into post-launch and beyond. But especially coming off the heels of a Black Ops 4 that didn't have a campaign, having a campaign that was really gripping and something that pulled players in was something that was definitely nice. Multiplayer, there's a lot that can be said about multiplayer, but just in the sense of kind of wrapping it up in a more generalistic perspective here. Gameplay, there were plenty of innovations, new features, and reception of some that, again, were good or bad depending on how you see it. Gameplay, you saw things like Tac Sprint. You had new audio elements and engines that were in place. The engine itself for the core of the game was brand new and something that was going to be the basis of what we see for years to come. You had new features like Ground War being something that was, at the time, kind of a real selling point for Call of Duty. They were trying to kind of steal that Battlefield market, as Battlefield 6 tried to do with Call of Duty this past year. But Ground War was that largest offering that Call of Duty had in a large-scale combat environment. Not so much to the point of like jets or anything like Battlefield would have, but you did have some aerial combat of a little bird, you did have the tanks that would roam around the map, and large-scale combat that would end up going upwards of 32v32. Gunfight was a much smaller scale, more intimate gameplay experience, offering 2v2 experiences outwards of 3v3 and scaling it back to 1v1s at points for LTMs throughout the year. Trials was a way to end up getting a bit more XP through tickets that were earned through playing the game in various capacities, but you also had things like abundant skill-based matchmaking. That was probably one one of the biggest things that's remembered out of Modern Warfare 2019's multiplayer experience when you look at it at a glance. The skill-based matchmaking system that we had was the first that we had seen in such an aggressive capacity since Advanced Warfare, but then on top of that, and going even stricter, and was something that we saw throughout the following years and up until just this past year with Black Ops 7 being the first to really kind of break the mold from what we saw with that. Now, whether it was something that was retention-based, skill-based, there's debates that could be had here on that, but the matchmaking system was definitely something that was meant for keeping players playing longer and wasn't just as simple as queue up, here's your closest 11 other players in a 6v6 match, go at it. But one thing to also consider with multiplayer at the time was that there were missing core features. Things like the minimap. That was not even present in the beta of the game. There are also no red dots on the minimap. They appeared on the compass, but a hard deviation from what we had seen before. Dead silence was not a perk, but rather a field upgrade. And those things, among others, were fought back from community feedback by Infinity Ward for months on end. It took quite a bit of time before we started to see those things even acknowledged, and in some cases, took games to get them back. Other things like mounting in the game were something that wasn't incredibly fun to some players, and those that did the camo challenges probably remember that was actually a core integral part to some of those challenges. You had things like squad spawns that were introduced that disrupted the entire competitive flow of how the game ended up playing. You had doors to cut off visibility of certain areas and maps. You had faster TTK and more lines of sight compared to any other Call of Duty game we had seen previously, and plenty of other things that, again, coming down to however you saw this in your gameplay experience was probably something that dictated whether you liked it or not. Modern Warfare 2019, for better or for worse, was a very divisive game in relation to the hard stances and opinions you'd end up having. I feel like this game, more than others, had more of that hard stance of it's good or it's bad and not so much gray in between. But in doing so, mixing it then with that Modern Warfare name, the first time we had seen this in almost a decade at that point, it was something that brought in the average player. It did revitalize that interest in Call of Duty, making it a more realistic while also still arcade shooter at the same time. But again, it just came down to preference of opinion. Spec Ops was a continuation of the storyline, but unfortunately it wasn't really supported all that much post-launch, and it was something that for many was just kind of there. And post-launch support, it was our first free content offering. That was the big thing here with this one. And I remember distinctly being at an early review event, like a type of capture event that just allows press and creators the opportunity to play the campaign, get some footage of multiplayer, have access for like a day or two or something like that, about a week to a week and a half before the game's launch in order to prep content and reviews for embargo dates. At that event, studio heads had mentioned to us at a dinner the recent leaks around that time, the reports that were going around that until that time, legitimately the week before the launch, things were saying like supply drops would be returning, the DLC packs were still considered to be a paid for item, and that directly then from the studio heads, we had heard that that wasn't the case. I'm sure there was a solid chance that that revelation, even for them, was new, as those types of decisions can often come truly down to the wire. Another standout element was Warzone, where devs had thought that was going to be included in the, and only in the paid-for Modern Warfare 2019 client, like Blackout was for Black Ops 4, but that was of course something that we saw free-to-play, a continuous offering spanning years. But Modern Warfare 2019 was the first game to offer DLC for free, heavily focusing then on things elsewhere in monetary compensation, from things like battle passes and shop items, but for the first time in COD history, there was no split in that player base based upon if you had DLC or not, which was a huge factor for the game and its experience, because just a year before with Black Ops 4, we even saw an all-or-nothing style Black Ops pass that heavily compartmentalized player bases, where instead of one player may not have one of the 4 DLC packs, it didn't matter. It was something that if you ended up having that Black Ops pass, you had access to all the DLC maps, or if you didn't, you had access to none. So this was met with immediate praise, but depending on your outlook, could have also been something that was an argumentative point as of the year progressing. Many players feeling unhappy with the quality or quantity of content offerings, and some would say that that free offering held them to a lesser standard for post-launch requirements. But again, all perspective based, however you saw that. Now Warzone, well, of course, that was probably one of the biggest things that was remembered here out of the Modern Warfare 2018 package. Released mid-Season 2, arguably the most impactful piece of the equation for Modern Warfare 2019 and the future going forward, for better or for worse. The free-to-play Warzone blew up right at the right time. Free for all players, the world on lockdown via pandemic, and all looking for something to do, something to escape the reality of the world. Mix an approachable gameplay loop, well-known franchise, and a gameplay feel that was easy to pick up and addictive, and you had a recipe for success. lightning in a bottle. There's really not much more that can be said about this, with Call of Duty, of course, still having that at the forefront of the offering even 6 years later, and going into the future, potentially having a Warzone 3.0 checkpoint coming up later this fall. Nowadays, well, you're not going to get that classic Warzone experience that millions of players had firsthand experience with in Modern Warfare 2019 if you boot it up today, but it can be a fun throwback for the foreseeable future. With a sale for the Activision titles going on throughout the rest of the month and likely a relatively healthy player base as a result, you'll still be able to check out the game and give it a shot if you liked it or interested in a little revival. You just want to go back and try something out you haven't in quite some time. Whether reliving the glory days of what you think is one of the best CODs in the franchise, or maybe it's something you are not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole, the opportunity is there for the first time in a while to do either one of those. Now, what this means for the future, firstly, I think the biggest question that a lot of people could have had was, is this a marketing ploy? Like, is this something that is sort of concocted, constructed, or is it a genuine organic resurgence based off a random, potentially annual sale here at this? Who knows? While still in touch with a few people that are entirely dialed into the COD scene, unlike I have been the last year or so, they've said they've not heard it any more than just a coincidence, but I just for fun kind of like to have that tinfoil hat on for a little bit more, because while we're not close, we are getting closer to when historically a Modern Warfare 4 title reveal of some kind could be coming. Usually those sort of reveals of the upcoming game come late April at the earliest, anytime in May, and then June sometimes we see those traditional sort of marketing periods. Of course, the Warzone related reveals we've had in the past ended up pushing things outwards of like August, but with this kind of game coming up, I'm not expecting that. So with a confirmation sometime the next month and a half or so, it's not the worst sort of conspiracy theory, if you want to call it that, or I guess tinfoil hat, because conspiracy I feel like is a bit deeper of a discussion here at that. But my only hope for this year is that the COD franchise going forward doesn't neglect the good because of a down year or so. You can take, if you really want to see this next game modeled more so after Modern Warfare 2019 than a Modern Warfare 2, you can take those elements and still keep those things that in the past years have been positive additions to the COD franchise. What I mean is this: Call of Duty, Activision, and now Microsoft, they have this uncanny knack to ditch all positives out of a project that has had a remotely down year. And Black Ops 7, while we can argue semantics, largely did finally do things players had asked for years. None or lessened matchmaking restrictions. Frankly, I don't know where that stands nowadays, since I've spent much more time away from COD the last few months than in. Consistent events with worthwhile rewards like camos, albeit the leaderboard events are not the way that they should be going about it. New mastery style rewards like the Ultra Mastery camo for completing all mode mastery camos. Things like that. Like, there have been objectively good things that players have wanted for years that are finally in place with Black Ops 7. But when you take a look at a game like Black Ops 7, it's likely just a large part due to general fatigue. I mean, it's been so similar the last few years. Do you take that positive feedback and just throw it out because, well, the rest of the game wasn't necessarily something that was a big seller? Or you keep some of those elements and build off of a formula that you do think could work? I frankly don't know how much of a future my content looks like with or without COD's launch this year. I'm still generally disinterested with a lot of the elements as of right now, just from sheer fatigue. Like, I've covered the COD franchise here on the channel, obviously not recently, but for 13 to 14 years on this channel that I have had an intrigue in the story. I've got an intrigue in the general idea of what Modern Warfare 4 may be, but whether or not I'm in it for the long haul, I won't truly know until I actually get some hands-on with it. But that said, regardless, I do hope that for the players that are diehards, that do want to see something they enjoy, I hope you get that game as well. So, that said, that's where we're at. Modern Warfare 2019, kind of an anomaly right now. Figured we'd just take a little trip back down memory lane, talk about it a bit. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think here of this resurgence we see with Modern Warfare 2019? Do you think it will lead to anything in particular? Do you think this was a marketing ploy? Let me know. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. Of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so it's a single thing ring all things FPS content. We'll go with that, because who knows what the future holds with COD on this channel or not. But make sure you subscribe to stay updated with all things FPS content. I'd love to have you in the community. For now, though, thanks so much for watching. My name has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care, and peace.